I'm big.
He doesn't say that with conviction. I'm
I,
surly.
I'm big.
See, now that's conviction. That was like before that he was like, oh, he lacks conviction. He lacks dedication to what he's doing right now. I didn't believe that you were big.
All you got to do is look at my giant fat head and see that it's an accurate statement.
But I think you've got that head that you could be anything from like 4'8" to 6'10".
It is I'm 6'2". It's appropriately, like, it does fit my shoulders. Like, how many people, I guess you can modify where you sit in the frame, but I am literally an equilateral triangle. I can lay down on the ground and touch my toes. Like, if this is my body, toes and hands, and I make an equilateral triangle. It's like 2 feet, 2 feet, 2 feet. So
I have an unfortunately vivid imagination.
I'm shaped like a gorilla. Almost. Like my shoulders, if I hunch, shift my head down. Is that a sound gorilla make?
Is that speciest?
Sound I make.
I think that's speciest. Do you want to get canceled? I haven't. Oh my God. Did you actually just ask me if grunting like a gorilla is speciest?
You asked me if grunting like a gorilla was speciest.
No, I said, isn't that speciest? Implying a joke. You took it seriously, went, really? We can get canceled for that? Speciest is a thing? Actually, it might be. What are those people called? The Furbies? The people who like furries.
Furbies. Furbies were the little doll that you'd pet and its eyes would goggle back and forth.
Yeah, it was creepy as fuck, if I remember
correctly.
Creepy.
Really creepy. Furries are people who are into what's called yiffing, I believe.
What?
Yiffing, which is having sex.
He actually knows about this. Okay,
we're in for discussion. Suit. Well, you have sex in a furry suit or in a, like basically a mascot
like costume. Just one of those little fetishes.
Well, what's truly messed up is some of the suits have like hatches for genitals. And some of the suits
have built-in genitals.
Yes, like giant fake furry genitals.
That makes sense.
And they then proceed to imitate.
And by sense, I mean crazy.
Sex by that attitude's
actually, so that we
dismissive
don't alienate
of a subculture.
The furry population, I actually could give zero fucks how you fuck. I'm just like being rude for the sake of being rude. I'm surly. This is my persona. Thank you very much.
This episode is definitely not meeting the don't curse in the intro to the show.
No, but I've noticed that everybody curses, and it's not really much of an issue. So, anyway,
everybody hurts, Josh.
Oh, life is
sometimes.
And on that note, we are going to do the intro today because we kind of started with something else because why not? And remember, if you can, click like, subscribe, blah, 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 share. And just to recap that we are still on this season. We're just going to call it Reboot Season 1, I guess. Why mobilization and general strikes are the political voice of the voiceless in our democracies. We've had 4 topics to date. We're probably going to end on about 8 just to give people a little bit of a heads up so this won't be as painful much longer. We went over the housing gap, the poverty gap, escaping the poverty trap, civility, exploitation, and today we're going to talk about stoicism, and this is Alex's idea. So why don't you tell us what the hell you mean by stoicism?
Well, stoicism, at least in American culture, gets presented as the keep your chin up, kid attitude, the grin and bear it attitude.
Well, I mean, that's really part of the American
don't let
mythos.
it show that it bothers you. The tough old codger. Ron Swanson.
Who's that?
The guy from Parks and Recreation.
Oh, I haven't watched that.
He also has an impressive mustache.
Are you
Like
still
there
trying to
is an
justify that thing?
episode.
I'm sorry I hurt your feelings about the mustache, but it's just I see that and he had a mustache when I first met him in 2008 and now he has a mustache again. And it really looked like middle management bureaucratic or pedo, and I thought pedo was funnier, so I went with that, and I think we're going to stay with that.
Yeah, but the fact that I usually wear button-down shirts, may or may not wear a tie, and wear sweater vests definitely says middle management bureaucratic. I really miss my calling. I should have gone into HR. I would have been great at HR.
Oh God, maybe.
Hi, can I help you guys today? I'm in the helping fields right now.
That's true. So stoicism.
So stoicism is that attitude that you shouldn't show it if you have a problem.
Well, I mean, what Stoics are part of Greek philosophy? It was just
Sure.
kind of a form of fatalism, and fatalism is
Yes.
the idea that there's really nothing you can do to change the world. You just have to accept whatever comes. Would that be correct?
That's such a shitty attitude to have.
Yeah, but that's stoicism, right?
Sure.
Yeah,
Sure. That you need to just grin and bear
yeah.
is probably the most apt colloquial version. It's it forces people don't ask for help because if they're floundering, it's supposed to be seen as a weakness on their part that they are floundering.
Yeah, so you've got the victim blaming mentality there.
And on top of that, you have it creates a cycle whereby someone who does in fact need help avoids seeking help because they either don't feel that they're justified in receiving help, or they feel that to ask for help is a weakness, a part of a myriad of options, but those two are very common.
And those are more common in traumatized individuals, we find. So, I mean, it's not so much an internalization of the capitalization of all forms of life.
If you're
As
poor in America, if you're black in America, if you're Latino in America, if you're a woman in America, you will have probably been traumatized. For some of those groups, the system is designed to traumatize them.
Oh my God, yeah. Poverty is it is a
racial injustice
degrading.
just based on my appearance. I'm a third-class citizen. That's got to feel like shit. That's not a pleasant experience to have to go through on a daily basis. I don't know why more white people don't get that. Maybe it is because we lived in South Korea and were non-citizens. And as a result, we're treated quite poorly at times.
Yeah. Well,
maybe that helps with the empathy. I don't know.
I mean, Newfoundland traditionally doesn't have any black population. When I was a kid, I mean, I knew one kid who lived next door to me, who my brother was friends with, and I'm friends with to adulthood. But like, other than him and his sister, there weren't many people around. You might see one once in a blue moon driving, but that's like Newfoundland. We're a very isolated island here. So, I mean, we had the religious problems, we had the class problems, but
you probably had more Catholic Protestant beef than you did racial beef.
Yeah, I mean, there is an Aboriginal population in the center part of the province, but we are one of the few places to successfully exterminate a tribe, or we thought, or that was the propaganda for a long time. It's turning out to be not so true. So for a long time, like I grew up not knowing that there was Aboriginals left on the province. Like it was like taught in sociology that they were dead, and no one ever talked about the Mi'kmaq. It was only the Beothics. So I had no idea.
I'm just letting that sink in.
Well,
No, just that you admitted not knowing something.
I always admit what I don't know.
I'm fucking busting your
Hmm.
balls. But it's the same with how many people have just recently started hearing about the Tulsa massacre.
I heard about that before it was popularized by Watchmen, the sequel, prequel. But
I
yeah,
grew up
only
in
because of like
Kansas
activism.
and like at a young age heard of the town of Nicodemus.
Hmm.
It just being a small black farming community that the white people all around it rose up and fucking drove them out of the state
Hmm.
because they didn't like successful black people.
Yeah. No, it was America and all of North America is basically colonial lands. We
Yeah.
shouldn't be here. The only reason Europe survives as it does to this day is because it was able to export most of its poor population, and that actually managed to keep revolutionary sentiment in line long enough so that they could like buy off most people.
Certainly for Ireland.
Oh, for all of Europe. Like the colonial expansion is the only thing that delayed World War One. Is that basically it ended up making the wars much worse, but colonialism is what stopped European wars for almost 500 years after the ends of the Crusades, which was a population culling thing, from what I understand of some historical ratings I've done in the past. So, I mean, if you look at the Crusades as getting rid of excess population, and you look at the colonialism as getting rid of excess population, Europe is literally 800 years on the brink of having its systems destroyed, and all has literally only survived because it was able to get rid of most people through expansion and the wars and stuff that ensued.
Space could be our stopgap. Maybe Elon Musk will bring us Mars.
He's not going to. Musk, without planet Earth, the species dies. It's like a 0% survival rate.
We live in sweet moon cities.
Not the way things are going right now, we don't. But that's another topic. We're talking about Stoicism today. And I mean, this deals with a lot of some of the underlying concepts we've actually just been talking about with the isolating and mistreatment of Black communities, the mistreatment of Aboriginal communities, the mistreatment of poor white communities. I mean, the upper class of Europe have preyed on its own people successfully for hundreds of years before we got onto colonialism. And so I mean, when we talk about historical trauma, the historical trauma of the peasant class of white people is centuries long. And while the upper class of Europe and now North America have successfully used wedge issues like racism to keep everybody at each other's throats, it's these wedge issues have literally created the feeling that there is nothing you can reach out to. Like no matter where you turn to, the system is against you. And that is a feeling that is ubiquitous in poverty, in my opinion. So I mean, that feeling really, if you're there is nothing to reach out to for help, is a muting effect. And I mean that feeling of precariousness or depression or fear when it's in both of the parents is passed on to the child. So it creates a cycle where there
Not
is a
just
fear of
psychologically,
typing.
but physically.
Changes the neurons. It's a series of learned behaviors, the way the brain works,
But
whether
it
sudden brain
causes
development
epigenetic change.
occurs. What is epigenic? Epigenic?
Epigenetic. They're genetic adjustments that happen over the course of the lifetime of an organism.
Yeah,
So me and
phenotype
a
changes.
baby, if I had a
Yeah.
child when I was a baby, it would be have very few epigenetic. adjustments. But if I have a child as a 40-year-old, there's a very high chance that I have epigenetic adjustments.
So you mean just changes from the environment that imprint upon the genetic code that can be changed onto further organisms and
Sure,
affect
the
the
most
exterior
common
of
expression is the studies that were done in like Nordic countries with isolated villages, and they used it to determine that a tendency towards obesity often comes as a result of
a historically
earlier
high diet.
generations having no famine. You learn your body to be more successful converts fat so that you would survive a famine.
Yeah. So
but if you live in a
calories.
non-famine time,
Yeah. Well, that just means you got to
are
consume
overweight.
Yeah, well, calorie consumption is an issue too.
Sure.
You drink a lot of cola, dude.
It's all
that's
diet.
half sugar. It's not all diet. Is it? I've seen you drink like straight up Mountain
No, I don't
Dew.
drink regular Mountain Dew.
All right, I'm not.
I don't like regular Mountain Dew. I actually enjoy the fake sweetener better.
All right. So
the regular stuff hurts my teeth.
That's weird. So yeah.
You don't eat candy and have it hurt your teeth? No. You probably don't eat candy.
Not very often.
Is there vegan candy?
Yep.
I bet vegan chocolate's fucking terrible.
Depends. Some of it's good.
I suppose if you eat a vegan diet, anything potentially tastes good.
Your palate is learned.
Yeah. That's my point.
Yeah. It changes as you change. Or decides to change it. Like learning.
I just presume vegan food is either heavy on the spice or really bland.
It's delicious.
Vegetables don't have a shitload of flavor.
The food I eat is as delicious as the food you eat, in my opinion, except it's usually less heavy and it doesn't leave me feeling fucking logy for hours.
I kind of like feeling logy.
Well, I mean, the shit's bad for you. That's scientifically proven. I basically changed for health and environmental reasons. It had nothing to do with empathy. I'm not very good at empathy in this world. Well, that's not true. I feel bad for people, but like there is a real part of me that goes, you fucking brought this on yourselves, dumbasses. So, yeah. So, yeah. Well, it's fair.
I guess it's fucking cold hard.
Man, I decided after reviewing the science back in 2003, I was fairly certain the species wasn't going to make it. That I continue to try to help is rather shocking. Despite the fucking vitriol and mockery I've endured as an environmentalist since 2003. Despite fucking usually people being real fucking cunts to me up until they're realizing that I'm right, and then I move on to the next topic that makes them uncomfortable.
Now, if a person who had been cunty to you comes to you and says, you know what, now I think you're right, do you get a sense of satisfaction? I think I must be more petty than you then, because I would be like, yeah, I wouldn't rub it in their face because that's uncouth. But I would fucking feel good
to have someone to, whether
part of me is like waiting for my sister to come around.
Some people
like my brother-in-law is on strike right now.
Oh, good for him.
And they're a family of Trump supporters.
Well, hopefully
so being on strike and a member of a union and a family of Trump supporters doesn't really gel.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the thing is people learn over time. It's like I've always said, for me, it's about the conversation. You've won the argument not when a person agrees with you, but when they repeat your words back to you as if they're your own.
Yes.
So I mean, that's the sort of thing I look for when I do the stuff I do online. And when I work in the forums I do, or I have discussions with people, is I don't care where they think they got the idea. I just expect them to learn it over time as I present more and more and more information. Like, I've been successfully flipping forums like news forums, changing them to the dialogues I want them to be having for the most part since 2015. I mean, it's not very difficult. People are looking for answers that are outside of the false dichotomies presented by the fucking media. So, yeah.
And that's kind of the point of this show, is to give you guys, and this is your Alex moment, to give you the words to explain what you already know. Not everybody's good at words. I'm not good at a ton of shit, but one of the things I am good at is words. It may not always make sense at the time, but if you let it steep, you'll probably get something from it. And that's what we're trying to do for you, is to give you the words to explain what you're already thinking. Like stoic. You don't need to be stoic.
Reach out for help.
Well, it's not even just reach out for help. Be there to
Not
extend
the worst
help.
plan. That too.
This is one of the things we're talking about, because foundational to this idea that social movements are the way we actually get change, and protest and organizing is how we actually make the world a better place. It requires not just people saying, please help me. It requires someone being there to offer that help.
Yeah.
And then you pay it forward, and you pay it forward, and you pay it forward.
And this is
eventually
not like
a community gels around that effort.
Yeah.
Once the community comes together, you really start to have something, because then you're not just working on a common idea. You're working for each other on top of working towards a common idea. Like, one of the things that I have always, part of me wishes I had gone into the military, not because I want to kill somebody or serve people that I don't necessarily think should have the right to send anybody to their deaths potentially, but because of the camaraderie that soldiers that I've worked with in my social work career have expressed feeling towards each other, is something that I have never really experienced. That like sense of brotherhood or sisterhood or connectedness that comes from not just being a member of an organization that has a professed goal, but being a member of that organization with a professed goal with the specific intention of helping to support everyone else that's also attempting to meet that goal. And I'm not suggesting that these social organizations take on a militaristic hierarchy. What I am suggesting, however, is that that sense of camaraderie is very important when we talk about solidarity. Like, if you go out to a meeting and somebody rubs you the wrong way, stop for a moment and say, is this person mentally healthy? Is this person maybe experiencing a great deal of anxiety when they're in these social settings, but they care so much they're still willing to put themselves in a position where they feel anxiety? Is this person maybe misspeaking and they're not great at expressing their thoughts, but they're willing to put themselves out there, which is hard enough? You know, extend some grace to each other, because that's how you build a community. That's how you build a movement, is not constantly fucking nitpicking at each other. Well, and I mean, that's part of the problem with the left, is the left just, you're not as progressive as I am, and I'm more progressive than you, and
pissing contests.
Yes. And it gets rather fascistic rather quick.
Well, I mean, I was having this discussion today online with people on the left, and it's like, one, and this is from, I'm routinely hated by both sides of the spectrum. So I'm quite used to this. But the left is its own worst enemy, whereas the right is well, actually becoming its own worst enemy these days, but that's another story. But the left has been its own worst enemy for a long time, and that is because the liberals are wolves in sheep's clothing
Yeah,
and have infiltrated
I
identity
don't even consider them
politics.
part of the left.
No, I like to say if you scratch a liberal, a fascist bleeds. And in fact, I mean, the liberal and fascist ideology worked hand in hand through colonialism to get a narrative going of good and bad colonialism that actually perpetuates our problems into today. But my point with that is that I've lost my point. God damn it. I'm so bad for this. I'm sorry, folks. I'm somewhat of a burnout these days. I've been in basically a fight against my legal community for like 7 years now. And while I just managed to beat off some false criminal charges, I'm still transitioning over to malicious prosecution, litigation, and how to continue fucking with my local legal system. So I get a little bit disjointed sometimes in my thought. And I still smoke way too much weed for my own good. So, admissions aside, um, the idea, I'm going with this, as we have this idea in our heads that there's like left and right, but liberal is an economic stance more than a anything stance. It's a centrist idea. And as we know, the center is where the rich go to make sure they don't lose their benefits. And we've seen this behavior through 200 plus years of labor revolutions and literally class warfare, is that there will be just enough compromise to get people moving forward. And the second that they're capable of returning things back to a status quo like fucking Oliver Twist existed in, they go for it and don't even think twice. So these people, the status quo, the liberal, whatever, the liberal Democrats, the Republican conservative dichotomy is a sideshow. Like, if this is the best economic system that we can imagine, we don't deserve to survive as a species.
Well, clearly in America and Canada, it's not even the best that exists in the world.
Hmm.
Like German style capitalism makes more sense than our version.
And they're still they have done the same. They have used Europe the way that colonialism used Africa. Because they have a monetary union without like a social net that recirculates money that builds up in Germany
Germany is sucking
to
all
the
the
rest.
wealth out of the rest of Europe. Yeah.
Exactly. And now that the rest of Europe is starting to fail, we're starting to see the same signs of fatigue and damage in Germany itself as people are waking up to the idea that not only are they fucked economically, but now climate change is there, which is
Well,
going
this is why
to
I'm a regionalist. There needs to
won't survive as
be.
a regionalist.
What do you mean?
I mean, this is like I actually really like the. Have you ever read the book Catch 22?
Yes.
All right, that's
Do you
that
know what I mean by
fantastic.
regionalist?
It's someone who works locally, like
No,
works.
I think
Okay.
that infrastructure wise, our there should be regions of the globe that have all of the necessary infrastructure to support that region individually in that region.
We actually have to make our supply lines much smaller. We have to reduce consumption vastly, like vastly, if we're
And
going to
that's
turn
easy
around
to
this environmental
do
thing.
in places. I guess I don't know about vegetable production in Newfoundland. I don't know
90% of
how
our food
much
is
is imported.
imported.
Is it?
90% is from when the last
If
time
it's
I was
not
able to
South
find
Cat,
stats on it. What's that?
if it's not good old South Cat, it comes from off the island.
Oh, salt cod.
That's how Steve says salt cod.
Salt cod?
South Cad.
Yeah. His accent's not as he's got a towny accent, I think. He might be
He's them fighting.
what?
I don't know.
That
I
is
don't know
kind
if
of fighting
towny
words.
accent is offensive.
It's an accent. It's a recognizable accent. Like Newfoundland is one of those places where it was small, isolated communities. So there's actually a lot of regional dialects that are slowly dying out now,
Mm,
which is unfortunate. But I mean, I will still meet people who I have trouble understanding, and you would not stand a chance in hell of understanding. Nothing personal, like they might as well be speaking another fucking language. The only
sure.
reason I recognize it is because I know half of what they're saying already because I've heard it from my grandparents out around the bay, right?
Well, oh yeah, boy. What you on about?
Yeah.
That what you on about
Yeah.
is not a sensible statement. It does not immediately translate to someone who's never heard
What are
it
you on about?
before. It yes, but that
You fucking cracked, are you?
what exactly? What are you on about? What do you mean? What am I
Yeah,
on?
what are
What
you on
am I
about?
on about?
Yeah,
You mean
what are you
what are
blabbing
you
about?
doing?
What are you
Yes,
blathering on about? What foolish
that
errand, what
makes
foolish
sense.
thing are you doing? Yeah, well, that's what it means.
I
What are you
understand
on
that.
about?
But what are you on about makes no sense. And
Look
when
up
you
the
couple it
Newfoundland
with
dictionary.
what are you on about? It sounds like one word.
There's a Newfoundland dictionary.
That's great.
It's pretty funny, actually. I was in my dad's house when I was a kid, and it's good for a laugh.
Skidoos.
Now, why do people need to reach out though? And I mean, this is really a core concept here. Is like people are isolated, and if they don't, you were talking about your Trump family who have like doing strikes now. And I mean, even they have to understand this. And I don't know if these numbers are accurate. I would actually be quite curious because, internet and everything. But if the boss makes a dollar, I make a dime line was real, Amazon workers would all have $19 billion. So I guess that's cumulatively shared between them at 10% of what Bezos gets. Again, I guess this was when he made he was at 190 billion. If the boss makes 1,000 and gives me a cent line was real, Amazon workers would all have over $100 million. So I mean,
As a group.
as a group, but that's I mean that's
So Bezos is
yeah.
reaping more than 99% of the income, the wealth that is a result of the efforts.
Now, Amazon is like a huge part of this problem that we're going to be discussing in relation to solidarity today, which is basically corporations, us as people funding corporations by paying welfare or social services or whatever non-pejorative word you need to the worst off in our society who are barely keeping their heads above water.
If social welfare is shameless, then every large American company is shameful.
Mm.
You need not feel shame for receiving government benefits because McDonald's and Walmart and Amazon and a host of other companies are receiving those benefits. If you go to a fast food restaurant, it is highly likely that the person behind the cash register either receives or is qualified for social safety net support. If you go to Walmart, it is highly likely that the person working there. Now, in recent days, Walmart, at least in my area, has raised their wages from $18 to $25. Now, a little digging, it's 18 bucks. I don't
Mm.
know a single person who started at higher than $18.
Mm. And they're only doing this because of massive pushback right now.
Labor shortage.
Yeah.
I saw a great meme that basically said, I walk into a gas station. I pick up a $3 bag of chips. I go to the cash register. The person at the cash register tells me those are $3. I say, I have $1. I would like these chips. The person at the cash register says, no, you can't have these chips. And so I don't get to buy chips. How is that acceptable when we talk about products and not acceptable when we talk about labor? People are expecting to get paid more. And so the labor market needs to shift accordingly.
Yeah. But these minor shifts are still keeping people below poverty lines.
Sure.
Because I mean, we need to understand these things as thresholds, right? Like there are living wages, and a living wage is the basic amount you need to just survive and make your bills. There's thriving wages, which is what the middle class was built on from the 50s to the 70s, where
Sure.
one person could raise a family, send their kids to fucking university or college and still have a semi-decent life. They
And
weren't
in
stuck in the
between those
modern
two,
poverty trap.
there's saving wages where
Yeah.
you are potentially still caught by poverty, but are slowly building equity or wealth so that you might escape it.
Right.
Or so that you have enough money should some calamity befall you, you would be able to cover it. Because that's part of the problem when we talk about living wages. Living wages means I don't save $1. So if my car breaks and I need to suddenly come up with $1,000 to fix the car, if I'm making a living wage, I'm fucked because now I can't get to work. I can't make money to fix my car. And I already don't have enough money every month for there to be any extra for me to fix my car.
Yep.
So that is somewhat of an economic spectrum that people can live through.
Yeah.
And then after thriving wages, you go to the exorbitant wealth of the billionaire.
Yeah. And I mean, as far as I can tell economically, we can either have communities and infrastructure that helps us progress as people and as a world, or we can have billionaires, but we can't have both.
It was like 100, what is it? Million, billion, trillion, quadrillion.
Yeah.
So it was 100 quadrillion dollars. You could take that away from the billionaires, still leave them $1 billion.
Yeah.
And that is how much as we would have as a society.
Yeah. And I mean, everybody likes to talk about this whole idea of pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, but that whole statement in the past used to mean something that's impossible to do, and that we as a society have been convinced is like something we should all be trying to do. So I mean,
that whole Horatio Alger, like little guy makes good, becomes rich and famous
spiel.
It literally is statistically impossible for all of us to do it.
Yep.
So if only the most exceptional people get to do that, and
we don't even have that. If it was a meritocracy,
that seem remotely fair?
Well,
and yes, the Horatio Alger story is not a viable story anymore. It's not something that can happen.
I mean, like the idea of meritocracy is not even something we have. It's not the best of people making it to the top. It's just the ones with the best connections and the biggest head start, as a rule, with a few exceptions. So, I mean, now this
or the people willing to do the most questionable behavior.
How much are you willing to give up to get ahead? So, I mean, a government study, and this is from a Salon article called "Government Study Shows Taxpayers Are Subsidizing Starvation Wages at McDonald's and Walmart." And this used to include Amazon. And still will, because the new wages being offered are not keeping up with inflation. These are still starvation wages. So whatever people say, these new bumps at Walmart and McDonald's and Amazon are still bullshit.
Yeah.
But in the report found that in every state studied, Walmart was one of the top 4 employers whose workers rely on food stamps and Medicaid. And these are full-time workers. So these are people working full-time, having to survive on food stamps. This is not how the richest country in the world should be. And Canada has this issue too.
Well, part of the problem is also an endemic attitude amongst baby boomers that, wait a second, when I came out of college, I did just fine. And they're woefully ignorant of the fact that university now costs 200% more.
Yep, they are.
And that purchasing a house is not something you can do with $15,000 anymore. It
Nope.
takes $150,000.
Jesus, houses are cheap down south.
Oh, that's not a nice house.
Ah,
That's just a house.
that's still dirt cheap compared to
Like
what I've been paying
when
in
baby
Canada.
boomers were coming up, it was feasible for one parent
Mhm.
to work in
That was the
survive
thriving
as a
wage that
household.
we
Yes.
set. And I mean, us setting that as a thriving wage is pretty arbitrary, but that's just a general idea of what a thriving wage is describe it as that one income earner household that honestly lived quite well back in the 60s and 70s and 50s.
And now with two income earners,
People aren't making it.
people aren't making it.
Yeah. So, I mean, other corporate giants who have, from the same article from Salon, which will be posted in the link in the write-up eventually when this goes online. Other corporate giants who have a large number of workers relying on federal benefits include Amazon, Dollar Tree, Dollar General, Burger King, Wendy's, Taco Bell, Subway, Uber, FedEx, Target, Dunkin' Donuts, CVS, Home Depot, and Lowe's. And the report
So
cited data was taken before the coronavirus pandemic hit with its supply side inflation, and notes that issues have likely grown worse.
So it's retail and it's fast food.
It is the largest growing sectors in North America, from my understandings in terms of jobs, is the service industry.
We're a service economy. You got to pay the people. This is one of the things that I find so frustrating is that the powers that be don't recognize in a consumer economy, you must have consumers.
Mm.
The money will all flow back into their pockets anyway. Why not let us have some fun with it before they get it? It's a fake economy for the most part anyway.
I mean, a thriving middle class is what makes the best economy. I mean, you don't want too many billionaires. You don't want too many poor people. You want most of the people to be middle class. And even amongst the poor people, if you've got to have them, they should at least be surviving with dignity and respect. That is the most. We can't have fucking communities where people as can thrive. Then maybe we just don't fucking deserve communities. Like maybe we did. Like this is the part of me that's just like maybe we deserve what the fuck is coming down the pipelines in terms of environmental destruction, world wars, potential, et cetera, et cetera.
Resource conflicts.
Yeah. I mean, the report
people fighting over water.
Yeah, this article also goes on to say that in the report, which is linked in this article, 70% of the 21 million SNAP or Medicaid recipients worked full time.
SNAP used to be called food aid or food benefits or food stamps.
And there's another 2013 study from the University of California in Berkeley and the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign found that 73% of people receiving government benefits were from working families but had jobs that pay wages so low that their paychecks do not generate enough income to provide for life's basic necessities.
Should someone that works 40 hours a week make enough money to support
Two
themselves?
people working 40
Should
hours. Ridiculous.
well,
This is
I'm a single
working
adult.
This is working families. So this means
Yes.
two people working. So that's two people working together could not provide basic life necessities. So, I mean, this whole narrative of victim blaming the poor, when we're making sure through our support of our government and bureaucracies and national dialogue that these people will never escape poverty and will only have lives of desperation and hardship, is very much on our shoulders as far as I'm concerned.
Don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to extend help.
Yeah, like we have to come together as communities. And I mean, I'm very much an abrasive dickhead, but that is somebody has to be, man. Somebody has to get out there and be ready to fucking go head to head. Like it's someone has to be willing to not be liked.
You're Antifa.
I'm very much black and white. I very much support the black and red anarchists. Thank you very much. Also, anti-fascists. Of
Who
course,
isn't
yeah.
everyone anti-fascist?
If you have a problem with anti-fascists, you probably
Are a fascist.
or fucking what's the term for it? Benefiting from the current behavior of our really quite frankly abusive governments internationally. I mean, this thing goes on to state wages at the bottom and middle of the income spectrum have been essentially flat since the late 1970s. As productivity has increased, pay has stayed very low, and again, our federal minimum wage is well below where it would have been if it kept up with inflation, and very far where it would have been if it had kept up with productivity growth. So these billionaires and millionaires exist because they've siphoned off that productivity instead of returning it to workers so that the infrastructure and literally ways of life that we've enjoyed for the last 50 years could be maintained in some fashion while we transitioned. And I mean, you got to wonder when you keep people poor and desperate, they're not going to give a shit about animal rights. They're not going to give a shit about the environment. They're not going to give a shit about their neighbors because when everything is focused on just barely surviving, you have no energy for anything else. And I mean, the insidious level of evil that these people exhibit when they treat their workers this way is not an accident. These people have made the choice to behave in this way, and they do not care who dies as a result of their behavior.
And the
You
only way
do
around it.
not. What's that? Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Finish your
As
thought. I thought you were done.
the only way to stop them is to basically rise up against them.
Unionize,
Mm-hmm.
organize, protest, vote. Get out there and try and do something. If you can't, if you don't feel like you're an organizer, don't organize, look for an organizer.
And they are out there.
Help, extend your hand to
That
organizations
snowflake
that could help.
lefty who's been screaming about wages, go fucking help them scream. Like, go out and exactly, like go out and help them, right? Like, even if you've
We
been making
working
fun of them for
together, we are
years.
stronger than the overlords. The overlords fear us coming together and working together.
And
that's one of the reasons they gin up nonsense to keep us at each other's throats.
Think about the billions of dollars spent to keep you ignorant of the power of collective responses. Like literally billions is spent keeping folks ignorant.
So quit with the ignorance.
I mean, like destroying people's self-esteem, destroying our communities, destroying families, like the whole liberal capitalism mechanism that we've been living under for the last 2.5 centuries is literally designed to isolate and disempower the individual.
And then to convince that individual that it's their fault.
Yep. And I mean, and even like when the unions were strong, and I mean, the unions grew out of grassroots mobilization of communities. This is the thing, the unions have become increasingly bureaucratized over the decades. They've been defanged as a result. Sometimes it's very questionable, even if they're working for workers. So, I mean, people need to move beyond these official channels and really work together to force what they think they need in their communities. Because, I mean, no one else is going to do it for them. I mean, no one's coming to save you, boys. They just aren't.
So you got to save yourselves.
And the only way
And
you
as
do that is
many people
together.
around you as you can.
It's like I like to say, it's a great catch-22. We learn to work together or we learn to die together.
I've been big.
And I'm demonstrating why I get called surly.
Like, share, subscribe, do all that good stuff. We will see you again.
Ta-ta.
Bye, con Dios.